Part 2, Chapter 2 of To Let. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Eva Harnick, Ponte Vedra, Florida. The Forsyte Saga, Volume 3, To Let, by John Galsworthy. Part 2, Chapter 2, Fathers and Daughters. Deprived of his wife and son by the Spanish adventure, Jolyon found the solitude at Robin Hill intolerable. A philosopher, when he has all that he wants, is different from a philosopher when he has not. Accustomed, however, to the idea, if not to the reality of resignation, he would perhaps have faced it out, but for his daughter June. He was a lame duck now, and on her conscience. Having achieved momentarily the rescue of an etcher in low circumstances which she happened to have in hand, she appeared at Robin Hill a fortnight after Irene and John had gone. June was living now in a tiny house with a big studio at Chiswick. A Forsyte of the best period, so far as the lack of responsibility was concerned, she had overcome the difficulty of a reduced income in a manner satisfactory to herself and her father. The rent of the gallery off Cork Street, which he had bought for her, and her increased income tax happening to balance, it had been quite simple. She no longer paid him the rent. The gallery might be expected now at any time, after 18 years of barren usufruct, to pay its way, so that she was sure her father would not feel it. Through this device she still had $1,200 a year, and by reducing what she ate, and in place of 2 Belgians in a poor way, employing 1 Austrian in a poorer, practically the same surplus for the relief of genius. After 3 days at Robin Hill, she carried her father back with her to town. In those 3 days she had stumbled on the secret he had kept for 2 years, and had instantly decided to cure him. She knew, in fact, the very man. He had done wonders with Paul Post, that painter a little in advance of Futurism, and she was impatient when her father, because his eyebrows would go up, and because he heard of neither. Of course, if he hadn't faith, he would never get well. It was absurd not to have faith in the man who had healed Paul Post, so that he had only just relapsed from having overworked or overlived himself again. The great thing about this healer was that he relied on nature. He had made a special study of the symptoms of nature. When his patient failed in any natural symptom, he supplied the poison which caused it. And there you were. She was extremely hopeful. Her father had clearly not been living a natural life at Robin Hill, and she intended to provide the symptoms. He was, she felt, out of touch with the times, which was not natural. His heart wanted stimulating. In the little Chiswick house she and the Austrian, a grateful soul, so devoted to June for rescuing her that she was in danger of disease from overwork, stimulated Jolyon in all sorts of ways, preparing him for his cure. But they could not keep his eyebrows down. As, for example, when the Austrian woke him at 8 o'clock just as he was going to sleep, or June took the Times away from him because it was unnatural to read that stuff when he ought to be taking an interest in life. He never failed, indeed, to be astonished at her resource, especially in the evenings. For his benefit, as she declared, though he suspected that she also got something out of it, she assembled the Age so far as it was satellite to genius, and with some solemnity it would move up and down the studio before him in the foxtrot, and that more mental form of dancing, the one-step, which so pulled against the music that Jolyon's eyebrows would be almost lost in his hair from wonder at the strain it must impose on the dancer's will-power. Aware that, hung on the line in the watercolour society, he was a back number to those with any pretension to be called artist, he would sit in the darkest corner he could find, and wonder about rhythm on which so long ago he had been raised. And when June brought some girl or young man up to him, he would rise humbly to their level so far as that was possible, and think, "Dear me, this is very dull for them." Having his father's perennial sympathy with youth, he used to get very tired from entering into their points of view. But it was all stimulating, and he never failed in admiration of his daughter's indomitable spirit. Even genius itself attended these gatherings now and then with its nose on one side, and June always introduced it to her father. This, she felt, was exceptionally good for him, for genius was a natural symptom he had never had, fond as she was of him. Certain as a man can be that she was his own daughter, he often wondered whence she got herself, her red gold hair, now greyed into a special colour, her direct, spirited face, so different from his own rather folded and subtilized countenance, her little lithe figure when he and most of the Forsytes were tall. And he would dwell on the origin of species, and debate whether she might be Danish or Celtic. Celtic, he thought, from her pugnacity and her taste in fillets and geebars. It was not too much to say that he preferred her to the age with which she was surrounded, useful though for the greater part it was. She took, however, too much interest in his teeth, for he still had some of those natural symptoms. Her dentist at once found Staphylococcus aureus present in pure culture, which might cause boils, of course, and wanted to take out all the teeth he had and supply him with 2 complete sets of unnatural symptoms. Jolyon's native tenacity was roused, and in the studio that evening he developed his objections. He had never had any balls, and his own teeth would last his time. Of course, June admitted, they would last his time if he didn't have them out. But if he had more teeth he would have a better heart, and his time would be longer. His recalcitrance, she said, was a symptom of his whole attitude. He was taking it lying down. He ought to be fighting. When was he going to see the man who had cured Paul Post? Jolyon was very sorry, but the fact was he was not going to see him. June chafed. Pondridge, she said, the healer, was such a fine man, and he had such difficulty in making 2 ends meet and getting his theories recognized. It was just such indifference and prejudice as her father manifested which was keeping him back. It would be so splendid for both of them. "I perceive," said Jolyon, "that you are trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." "To cure, you mean," cried June. "My dear, it is the same thing." June protested. It was unfair to say that without a trial. Jolyon thought he might not have the chance of saying it after. "Dad," cried June, "you are hopeless." "That," said Jolyon, "is a fact, but I wish to remain hopeless as long as possible. I shall let sleeping dogs lie, my child. They are quite